Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on learning about allergies, sensitivities, all of those clues that help us with our health. I'm Dr. Kari Barron. I'm a naturopathic doctor, board certified doctor of natural medicine. I focus on detoxification, hormone health, and vitality. Today, we have with us Dr. Alexis Sams. She is a friend of mine that I met at a local networking group. She is the Food Allergy Doc. Her expertise is uncovering hidden triggers with her FoodClues approach. So I love when I met Alexis. She was very subdued. She's a more mellow soul than I am. And so we had some great connections right off the bat. And after I met her, I actually kind of, researched a little bit to see more about her. And I bought this book and I read it before I saw her the next time, and I was very impressed. So this is something that we will be talking about, but want to make sure that we kind of set the stage for today. So Alexis is a detective in discovering what mystery things are going on with your body and how they could be related to food reactions. She's known as the Food Allergy Doc. Like I said, she's a holistic physical therapist and a food allergy specialist. She helps people worldwide crack the code on their food intolerances, sensitivities, and allergies. With her unique Food Clues approach, she digs deeper than just elimination diets, uncovering the hidden factors behind food reactions that most doctors overlook. She blends her background in physical therapy, functional medicine, and herbalism to create real practical solutions for those who feel stuck in the cycle of food restrictions. I have lived that myself. So this is very pertinent to what I do for myself as well as for my clients. Alexis is also a self-proclaimed foodie. Yes, even with food allergies, and the author of Food Clues, decoding the hidden messages behind your food likes and dislikes. She's on a mission to help people stop guessing, start healing, and finally enjoy food again without fear. So the reason that I wanted to address this is because I think food sensitivities and allergies have just grown enormously. And there is a lot of misinformation out there. People will say, I'm allergic to this or I'm allergic to that, when it may be a food sensitivity, or it could be because there's other things at play. Those foods are causing reactions in the body. So we want to offer real solutions, not just eliminate the food from your diet. Is there a way for you to resolve those allergies? And we want to get back to the root of what's going on with food and how your body responds to it. We want you to be able to enjoy the foods that are good for you and have your body receive those nutrients and utilize them at the cellular level. So that's my goal for today, and want to have Alexa share a little bit about what she feels is going on. And thank you for coming today, Alexis. I know we've got a super windy, odd day for us. So I was like, it's a little different than what we normally experience here. But tell us a little bit about how you got into this whole arena.
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be talking with you. One, because yes, we are friends and I love every moment that I get to spend with Kari Barron. But two, I'm just always eager and passionate about sharing the things that I've learned over the years that have gotten me to this point of being the food allergy doc and helping people really get that long-term relief from their food reactions and restrictions. So, how I got to this point was actually a journey, a very organic journey led by my clients over the years. I originally owned a outpatient orthopedic clinic. It specialized in performing arts medicine because I grew up as a dancer. And when the pandemic came, it required my clientele and it required my clinic focus to shift. Performing arts at that time, when everything was shut down, it was under that non-essential category. And so a lot of my clients and their family members knew that I had a functional medicine background. So they started asking me questions about like, can you give me something to boost my immune system? Can I do something so that I don't get sick? So that was kind of like the first shift in my business and in what I was doing in terms of my career. And then as the pandemic, as we moved further and further away from the height of the pandemic and things kind of started to resolve, then the questions started coming in of things like, can you help me, you know, get off of this medication? Can you help me with my blood pressure? Do you work with like thyroid dysfunction or hormone imbalance and, all these other type of chronic conditions, chronic symptoms? Can you help me with like this joint pain that won't go away, my headaches, my migraines, all that? So then my career took a more permanent shift to focusing more on the functional medicine specialty that I always had. And then it started with one client named Rhonda, who, if you guys follow me, which I'm the Food Allergy Doc on all my social media, you will see something about Rhonda at some point in my social media
We
because
all have those instrumental
we
people in our
do.
lives that point out what we need to be doing.
Exactly. And so she came in one day and I was working with her on chronic pain and inflammation. And she comes in and she was so excited because she did not have a reaction to her two former food allergies, which were melons and avocado. Her and her husband love to grill. And, in Arizona, it doesn't get very cold. So they love cookouts and hanging out with friends. And she was always a little leery, specifically of those times because of like guacamole and like fruit salad and stuff. So she would have to be extra careful because she would get, the swelling in the mouth and the throat and pain and the joints and things like that, those more common allergic reactions. And so she comes in one day and she was like, I had some guacamole or some avocado or something. And she was like, and I didn't have a reaction. And at that time I was like, yeah, cool, awesome. And I like noted it in in my note, her treatment note for the day. And honestly, I didn't really think much of it, even though like we celebrated. But we just kind of like, kept moving forward with her other issues. And then a couple more clients like here and there, like over the months, started saying similar things. Like their gut health was getting better, their gluten intolerance was gone, like all of this. And so it caused me to kind of just take a step back and look at this a little deeper. And that's when I started researching and just learning that so many people in America alone suffer or live different lives, like restricted by like food allergies, intolerances, sensitivities. And knowing that I had a solution that worked, I leaned into it a little bit more. So I tweaked my framework at the time that I was using for chronic illness and chronic conditions and added some things to really hone in and focus on the mechanisms that keep the body reacting to certain foods. And that's essentially how FoodClues was born, that philosophy, and how my Total Freedom program started. And now, yes, I still help people with chronic symptoms, but now I personally have pivoted my business to offer it more specifically to the food allergy and intolerance community, knowing that it's a community that frankly sometimes gets a little brushed off to the side with a, okay, well, just avoid your food triggers and
Yeah.
just take this medication and, good luck with your life. And, and that's
Yeah.
kind of it. So there's a lot of opportunity for letting people know that there are other solutions. So that's essentially how I became the food allergy doc. And it's been um, a blessing to be able to help people who felt like they couldn't be helped, who felt like, that
Hopeless.
diagnosis and stuff was kind of like the dead end and that was kind of it. It's been a blessing to be able to help people conquer, that type of challenge. And I don't take it lightly. I take it very seriously, and now it's kind of become an obsession to continue to research and find those deeper connections to get things moving faster, more effectively, more efficiently, so that those clients get that freedom and that long-term relief that they're looking for.
And kind of those shortcuts that are not really shortcuts, it's just optimizing in a different way.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah. So what do you see as the difference between allergies, sensitivities, or intolerances? I mean, I read your book and do you actually do allergy testing? Do you do any like blood labs or testing to go, okay, or is it just you go off of what foods that they have told you that they're having problems with? How does that work with you as far as identifying, is this really an allergy or is it something else?
So over the years and working with those clients and developing and putting those tweaks in my framework, like I mentioned, Um, I really just leaned into the fact that two things. All of the answers that are needed to get that long term relief of food reactions are already inside of you. They're already inside of the person. And a lot of times they are hiding in plain sight. And it's just a matter of understanding what signs and symptoms and what information, what it actually means, and how it all integrates and works together. So I actually created my own diagnostic tool to help figure all of that out. A lot of clients who end up working with me have already had a lot of allergy tests, blood tests, things like that. So when they do move forward into the program, I actually offer a private session to go over all of those previous results and pull that information in so that it makes sense to them. Because a lot of the times those tests can come back appearing inconclusive or appearing, negative or appearing some way, but being able to kind of like read between the lines and put some puzzle pieces together in a way that hasn't maybe been done for that client before, plus my own diagnostic assessment really gives that full picture of all the information that's needed to really figure out what's going on. So yeah, that's been a wonderful experience as well, being able to find a comprehensive system using traditional testing, but also developing my own that when you put them together, give all the answers for why things are happening.
So it's more of a
And
questionnaire base that you go through with them, that they fill out for you, and then you go, oh, okay, so it looks like these are the things that you're paying it that we need to pay attention to.
yes, and then we pair it with the results of the previous tests and things that most people have taken to like
Okay.
get that comprehensive picture. And to answer the question about the differences between allergies, intolerances, and sensitivities, I'm going to answer this question with a little bit of as much sensitivity and respect as I possibly can. Because the truth of the matter is, what I have found with clients is that there isn't as much of a difference as many people think there are. And when I say I want to approach it with sensitivity, what I do not want to do and what I is never my intention to do is to discount somebody's experience or discount how somebody feels about their experience. So me saying that I consider allergies, intolerances, and sensitivities to be similar does not mean I'm saying anything about somebody's reactions being more magnified or more intense and that being better or worse than somebody. So
Yeah.
those are two completely separate things. What I do find is that you'll hear me a lot of times use the word food reactions. And that food reaction is a spectrum, is what I have found. That spectrum is, I think, where people find those words between sensitivity, intolerance, and allergy. And what that spectrum represents is the magnitude of the underlying factors that aren't being addressed. So, very likely, someone who's been diagnosed with like an allergy and they have more intense or more pronounced symptoms, that is usually driven by an underlying factor that's been stirring a lot longer, flying under the radar a lot longer, impacting more organs, impacting more functions in the body than perhaps someone who may be diagnosed or maybe not be fully formally diagnosed, but with a sensitivity that
Yeah.
a lot of times has like less symptoms, less reactions, things like that. And that can very easily explain, or when I say it to clients, because I get this question a lot actually. So when I explain it to clients or people who are, considering my program, I'll say, that's how you can have somebody who's got full blown anaphylactic carries around an EpiPen to peanuts, and then some people who just get like a little tingle with peanuts, but they're both
Or
reacting to
their lips, or
peanuts.
their lips feel tingly, and they're
Yeah,
just like, yeah, that's something's not right. I
exactly.
I actually years ago, before, gosh, probably 20 years ago now, almost 20 years ago now, I was living in a situation where I would wake up in the middle of the night because I was choking. Like there was no air going through at all. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? It was scary. And I scheduled an appointment with an integrative medicine doctor, and she's like, well, let's do some labs because I want to see, is this an allergy? Do you have heavy metals? Is it an environmental situation? And so she did some labs. And with the labs, we discovered eggs, milk. cheese, and then soy a little bit were like the eggs, milk, and cheese were definite allergies. And I had never had any reaction to eating eggs, milk, or cheese before, like nothing ever associated with anything else. But she goes, and she said, "Do you know of any specific allergies that you know you have?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm allergic to roses and I'm allergic to adhesive tape because it would just rip my skin apart anytime a bandage was on my body." And she's like, "Oh, do you live where there are roses?" And I'm like, "I live in Mission Viejo. There are roses everywhere." And she's like, "Why don't you eliminate the eggs and the milk, dairy products, and see if that doesn't help?" And she goes, "In the meantime, when we don't want you to die from asphyxia, let's have you do Zantac and Benadryl." And that was back when Zantac was still okay to take.
Yeah.
And just so you don't die in your sleep. And I'm like, "Well, I won't die in my sleep. I always just roll over," because my uvula was closing off my air passage. It was just so swollen. And eliminating those things decreased my rose allergy tremendously. And I still say I probably am allergic to roses, but it doesn't bother me even a minuscule amount that it used to. And so for me, taking those off the table was important. But she also said that I had some nickel toxicity as well as, she goes, "You probably need to do a chelation, heavy metal detox." And so eliminating those was great. And then I did an allergy test recently because I wanted to see what a new lab company did as far as their feedback, how it comes back to you, reading the reports, seeing if there was any allergies that I had or my husband had. No allergies. And I had been thinking, I've been eating eggs and it doesn't bother me. And I've been around roses and it doesn't really bother me. Like I get a little itchy nose, but nothing major anymore. And to me, it was probably more the toxicity that I was encountering and having my body just be overwhelmed with the volume of roses that I was being exposed to at that point. Anything when you're getting huge volumes of something that your body's not happy with, everything starts shutting down to protect. And for me, probably about 10 years ago now, I ended up eliminating grains, beans, and rice from my diet. And when I put those things, if someone tested me for those, I was fine. But every time I ate those, I would not be feeling well. And when I actually learned more about the testing and things like that, I'm like, is this the chemical and metal toxins and all of the junk that's in grains, beans, and rice that I'm having a problem with? Absolutely. I had to go to Dubai for a conference. In Dubai, I ate everything. I ate everything and a lot of it. I ate like a big fat pig because I was like, "This is delicious. I haven't been able to eat this food forever." But that's because they don't allow GMOs. They don't allow, glyphosate and all of those chemicals on their foods. And so for me, I'm like, I'm eating real clean food. No wonder it wasn't like it was a bread allergy. It was the toxins in the bread. And it was a rare occasion when I wouldn't have a reaction, but I would still, I still have to be careful when I go to places because my body is still sensitive to those metals and chemicals and things like that. So I am much more aware of what I'm eating when and doing things to fix that. So yeah, allergies can be different for different people, and it can be such a dynamic with having an extra heavy duty load of toxins. People have all those mercury fillings in their mouth. They've got cookware that they shouldn't be using. They're buying cheap food. For me, I'm like, just buy organic meat, please, at least buy organic meat. And a lot of those quick detox strategies just don't work. So I love the fact too, I forgot to get it out. I will show you. I have a food sensitivities testing kit that I was using with clients because I thought it was a great illustration for them what foods their body is not happy with right now. So let's try and avoid those for a little bit and see and work on your detox and see what happens. So for me, instead of a questionnaire, I use those to do muscle response testing, and with eliminating those and then working on their gut health, we were able to take care of a lot of those food sensitivities. So gut health, I'm sure, is a huge factor in what you do too. How do you approach that as far as when someone is eating something they really want to eat and they're sensitive to it. Um, there's ways that I do testing that I can tell if it's a gut, an issue of the permeability of the
Mhm.
gut, or if it is lack of enzymes, things like that. I can do different testing, but how do you kind of approach those people? Like, do they come in and say, I want to fix this allergy? Or do you go, well, we've got all of these things that we need to be working on because of the way your body is reacting. So how does does that make sense? Am I asking a question or am I doing it too broad of a sense?
I think I get the gist of what you're asking, and you let me know if I answer the question or if
Yeah,
if my response is giving you what you wanted to know. So how I narrow down the the what I would call the internal dysfunctions um, comes out in my symptom assessment. So um, one thing, if I can take a step back and just talk about like the big picture just for a second, one of the things that I communicate with clients is that one, we get the number one goal that they are looking to achieve. So when
absolutely.
you ask the question about like, does somebody come in and they want like, to get rid of a food allergy or something like that, whatever they want to get rid of, we put that at the top of their list. It's actually on the first page of their printout for their assessment. And I do that very
What's
intentionally.
your
So
priority? Yes,
yeah,
because they
I
have to be
say like,
focused. Otherwise, you can't help them.
exactly.
Yeah.
I understand what you want. You understand that I know what you want. It is right there on the first page. We will keep it first on the list. Um, but then after that, I kind of go on to explain one of two ways. People will either hear me talk about the food allergy weed as an analogy, or they'll hear me talk about the food allergy equation. So when I talk about the weed, I liken or I propose that the symptoms that they want to get rid of, the allergy, the allergic reaction and things like that, those are kind of like the leaves of a weed. And the reason that I call it a weed is because like if your body is like the beautiful garden in your life, like the weeds are kind of the pesky things that they're an eyesore, they're like encroaching on the other beautiful flowers, so they're impacting your health, in other ways. They're not cute, they're kind of bratty and you want them gone. So that's why I call it the food allergy weed. The leaves of that weed are the reactions, the things that you're experiencing that you want to be gone, the itching, the redness, the hives, the belly aches, like all of those symptoms that come up with food reactions. Those are the leaves. So when I talk about it in this analogy, I often pose the question, if it was a real weed, if you had a weed outside in your yard and you just trim the leaves, would that actually kill the weed? And that's where people get their first light bulb and they're like, no. And I'm like, that's kind of like your Benadryls and your medications and stuff. It can make the weed look a little better because the leaves are gone, but the weed is still there. So you
Yeah.
got to keep going deeper. And so you touched on another point. You touched on toxicity being a driver. So toxicity in that food allergy weed, um, uh, you know, parallel, those are those roots. That really is the root
Ooh, I'm losing you. I
that
lost you there for a second. Can you say that again?
no problem. I said in the example that you were using, toxicity can be one of those roots. So in the food allergy weed, yes, we have to identify those roots so that when we kill the roots, it impedes or it stops the growing of the leaves. And some of those other kind of roots on top of toxicities can also be old injuries or surgeries that haven't been fully healed or repaired or restored, old infections that some people thought they got rid of, but when we go through the assessment and pull all the puzzle pieces together, we find that it's still kind of flying under the radar and stirring up things. So then it's causing like the immune system and stuff to act kind of funky. And then other types of trauma. So those root causes that are always starting outside of the body that have entered into the body and are causing an issue. That's the other end of the food allergy weed. But between the roots and the leaves that you experience, in your symptoms, we've got the stalks and the stems. And the stalks and the stems are the things that, to answer your question about identifying, whether it's a gut thing or enzyme thing, the stalks and the stems usually narrow down to two categories: organ dysfunction and process dysfunction.
Mhm.
So an organ or a tissue that isn't functioning optimally, and then within that organ or tissue, a specific process or a chemical reaction or a cycle, something that's not optimized or something that's not operating in its happiest state, so that it's causing the organ breakdown, triggering the immune system response, and that's when you got funky leaves. So a lot of times where people, yeah, so a lot of times where
I love the
people
dance move.
So a lot of times where people run into issues and they're not getting the relief that they're looking for, it's because they're trimming their leaves or they're digging and they're looking for the roots, but they're not addressing the stalks and the stems either. And so sometimes those are left to kind of run rampant and you kind of get yourself in a little circle of nothing's really resolving, nothing's really
Yeah. And
really
I think
changing.
too, people forget that allergies do have that emotional connection. And you said other things, but I'm like, it's an emotional connection. You have a
There
trauma.
is.
It was so funny. I learned that, oh my gosh, over 10 years ago with all of the stuff that I've been educated on with being a naturopath. But I had, someone was talking about the emotional connections with allergies. And I had a gal that was doing a yoga class at the gym that I was going to. She goes, come to my class. And I'm like, well, I'm not really big on yoga. It's just not my thing. And she's like, oh, come anyway. I do a great class. I'm like, cool. So I went in there and I was talking with her and she said something about an allergy. And I go, do you have a lot of allergies? And she's like, yeah. And I said, so you've had a lot of trauma in your life. Have you dealt with it emotionally? And she just was like, I said, when was the first one? And like we pinpointed dates and times because nobody was in the class yet. We were just talking. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've got emotional stuff that I got to deal with. And I'm like, yeah, that's one of the harder parts when it comes to healing is that emotional aspect of it. Or even feeling that you have value in this allergy as a pride thing. And it's the weirdest thing to say that out loud, but some people are very proud of their illness and they,
It's
oh
a strong
my,
identifier. Yeah.
well, and it's their identity is what they think.
Hmm.
Let's see, I'm celiac. No, you're not. You have a reaction to gluten, but you're not a celiac. There is no such thing as a celiac. It's an interesting dynamic when we get into that. Do you work on that aspect with people, or are they willing to work on that?
That's the more appropriate question. So so like I said, we're friends, you know me. So you heard me mention trauma, and
Yeah.
I did kind of pass through it. But the number one trauma that does hold back is emotional trauma. Um, I look for opportunities and I look for um, somebody's attitude, their verbal nonverbal communication. I kind of feel them out to see how ready they would be to have that conversation, and if they are, that is something that I can start somebody off on. But I also have referral colleagues as well, so we can kind of get that ball rolling, and then once they get to a certain point, I refer them to those referral colleagues to help seal that part of the need. It is a very strong need. It's, I work with it very delicately and very respectfully because, there's people, if I can be quite honest, there's people who already think I'm crazy because I'm like, I can figure out exactly what you're going through and what the problem is in like 10 minutes by you telling me just the collection of the foods that your reaction to. Like that's enough. And
Yeah.
now I'm
Well,
going
and
to tell
that's
you.
and that's what you have in here. This is
Exactly. And now
it's
I'm going to
like,
tell you that your emotions are connected to it. So sometimes
yeah.
I have to kind of, you got to get people like lukewarm um, to the concept of factors that they, maybe haven't considered or that nobody has really brought to their attention as those actual significant factors. Keeping those leaves in that food allergy weed alive and strong and growing. They are definitely there. And so you mentioned, just kind of circling back a little bit, about uh you talked about whether like gut versus enzyme and things like that. A lot of that comes in the concept of the food clues philosophy, which is that every food you avoid is a clue to your health. But taking it a layer deeper, it's the nutrient characteristics or the specific characteristics of those foods that are the clue to your health. So when you were talking about your story, my antenna
I
like
know you
automatically went
started
off.
smiling. I'm like, she's
I was like,
analyzing me.
I'm so analyzing you. You talked about roses, adhesives, and then egg and dairy. And while like, and this is more for the listeners because I'm pretty sure like you know this already, Carrie. But
I can always learn things.
when
I
you're
try.
talking about when you're talking about those like seemingly unrelated things that
Oh
people
no,
have
I know like
reactions
with the
to.
roses and the adhesive, I know exactly where those came in.
Hmm.
I can
So
name the day.
yeah. And so what a lot of people, what Food Clues does and what Food Clues asks is, what is something in that weed? What's a stalk or a stem? For actually, Food Clues reveals those stalks and those stems so that we can address those and kill that whole weed and get rid of your reactions. So, what's a stalk or a stem? What's an organ or a process that has adhesives, rose, egg, and dairy all in common? The first heading or the first kind of category that all four of those have in common are proteins. So, like latex allergies are usually related to
Oh,
you're reacting to like a protein in it.
that's another thing is latex.
Yeah. And so a lot of people don't realize that one in that example, that's the main thing that those foods and those items have in common. Roses, adhesives, egg, milk, they all have proteins in common. So Food Clues tells me whatever we reject or whatever we refuse is for protection because we can't handle it. So you're telling me you likely have an issue somewhere along the line with proteins. And then I start looking deeper. Well, what is it about proteins? Well, proteins break down into amino acids, which a lot of people these days, especially people who are talking to me and wanting to know about what I do, they're pretty smart. So they know that part. They know that the building blocks of proteins are amino acids. So when you kind of think about that, then we're thinking, well, maybe my body is reacting or refusing those four things because of an issue with managing acids. When we think about issues with managing acids, then we talk about what are the processes and what are the organs where are managed and things like that. Acids or proteins are also, so to answer your question, um, most enzymes are proteins. So it helps me kind of tease out, might they be having, or if they're having signs of a digestive enzyme type issue, that digestive enzyme type issue might be rooted in a difficulty with processing acids. Where does acid processing kind of happen? Combination between liver, kidneys. Those are kind of like the two powerhouses. So then I kind of start looking for other clues, other symptoms that you might have that might help me score points for, is there a liver problem going on? So hormone imbalances, thyroid dysfunction, migraines, headaches, joint pain, frequent muscle injuries, like things that nobody would ever think are related to like liver dysfunction, but they totally are. And
Yeah.
that's how I start pulling all that information together. So to answer your question, I really, like I said, the answers are hiding in plain sight and they're all inside of you. So I start picking and looking and digging and looking for patterns that match to
Yeah.
help point me in the direction to what's going on.
Yeah, and it's funny to think to add those kinds of enzyme issues and with I know very specifically the emotional connections with the adhesive, the roses, and the latex. There
Hmm.
were profound traumatic events at those 3 points that I've learned to deal with, feel the emotion, let it go, don't get stressed over it. It's a feeling, feelings come and go and work through processing those kinds of aspects so that I don't have to have those same sorts of reactions in the same way. I'm not perfect and I'm not there 100% yet, but I know when things like that are rearing their ugly head, shall we
Hmm.
say. And it's funny because I loved roses as a kid, but 16 years old, something happened, and sure enough, the rose thing was a full blown allergy. And I have had allergic reactions to rose hips in products that
And
I
certain
didn't even
supplements.
know that
Yeah.
had rose hips in it. And literally choking, calling my neighbor. I'm like, I'm choking. What can I do? And she had Benadryl. I didn't have any Benadryl. I'd never needed any allergy meds.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought over some Benadryl and saved my life. But that, not knowing that I was ingesting something that was something my body was like, no, we're shutting down right now. We want to protect the other mechanisms of the body. So no more roses for you. But I love that you are looking at tying all of those connections together. It's like me when I'm working with a client that is having hormone problems, there's all kinds of anger that just comes out all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes away, just overall tiredness. And I can look at that and I go, okay, number one, let's look and see where you are with Mercury, number one, because so much of the way Mercury screws with hormones is very, very definite. And I'm like, well, let's see, where are we with Mercury? Let's do a little detox. And they're like, oh my gosh, I feel 100% better. I'm like, oh, you're probably not 100% yet, but let's get rid of the rest of these other kinds of toxins that are limiting your healing process. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key for, somebody that is looking for help. So I look at it this way. I want you to have business and I want to support your practice. I know you support my practice. We have talked about this so many times. And I love that we are in the same area. We do things differently and we can utilize each other's key things. So one of the things that I want to make sure that people who are watching this now, or if they're watching it later on, we want to pay attention to when you are dealing with something like an allergy. Number one, are we trying to cut the leaves off? Are we ignoring the roots and just trying to take care of the symptoms? Putting I just was thinking of one of my clients. She had had a rash all over her body. She's like, I don't know what this rash is from. I got a rash all over. She had gone to like 2 or 3 dermatologists and they couldn't figure out what it was. They put her on antihistamines and like nothing was getting rid of it. And I knew this person very well. And I said, bet you it's emotional. No, it's not. And I'm like, well, let me hook up the biofeedback. I'm not going to say you're wrong because I'm not going to tell somebody something I don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I hooked her up to the biofeedback. It was late. So she lived on the East Coast. I was in California. I'm like, let's just get you going. Or no, I was in Arizona. No, I was in Texas. Anyway, I just figured we'll talk in the morning. Call me when you get up and we'll go over what I discovered through the biofeedback session. She texted me in the morning and I pick up my phone and it said, what the hell did you do to me? That's all it was. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, was she awake all night with diarrhea? All
Yeah,
I
what did
did
you
was like, what did I do if that was that was her response? And it was so funny because when she finally called, I'm like, call me. I want to know what did I do? She goes, there is not a bump on my body. And with the biofeedback device, I sent frequencies to her, but everything that was the priority that showed on that biofeedback device, because it gives you a continuum of numbers,
Mm-hmm.
everything was emotional. Everything that was in the high and even in the low was all about emotional stressors. And with biofeedback, I can send frequencies to somebody and their body will respond and it starts to retrain the body how to heal itself. So, having that perspective as a practitioner, I think is really important. Number one, we listen to our clients.
Mm-hmm.
We research to make sure that we know what we're doing. And we've taken so many classes and you creating your own diagnostic tool. I have my own diagnostic tool that I use with my clients. Plus I do muscle response testing or bioresonance or biofeedback because a lot of my clients need that extra kind of verification.
Mm-hmm.
And I use labs too, because I want them to know and be confident that yes, we're going down the right road. These are the things that are your body's priorities. And that you and I, we are always adjusting to work with that client to make sure that they're ready for that next step, that their body is responding the way that it should be responding, and that we're adjusting as needed. So, what other things do you think people should look for when they're having a practitioner helping them with their health as a general rule?
I'm gonna go out on a limb on this one.
Okay.
Because this is how I practice personally. Um, I'm not perfect. None of us are. We don't know everything, but ref- I kind of refuse to settle, at least initially, for an I don't know answer, or an it just happens answer, or kind of like a vague, not really giving an answer to the question of why you're having a reaction, or why there's been a change in your reactions. There is usually always an answer. And I think it's important to know that there are practitioners who can provide those answers. There are more of us, coming to the surface and speaking out about what we do every day. But I think that is at the top of my list, because that's what I do for my clients. When clients
Someone who really wants to investigate and get to
and
what's
get to
going
and
on.
give you an answer, and get to the reasons why things are happening or why they aren't. And so that would be the number one thing that I would say. If you're working with a practitioner, and I don't know these practitioners, this isn't personal, but if you're working with somebody and you're getting the answer of kind of like, well, it just happens, or even it's genetic. There can be genetic components that drive reactions, but that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, it's genetic, good luck with your life, there's nothing you can do about it. That's not
Not
true.
acceptable.
And the
It's
reason
not
that I can
acceptable
say
because
it's
that's
not,
not truth. That is
yeah,
not true.
it's not truth. And the reason I can say that is because of the work that I've seen in it changing people's lives. So I would really encourage people, when you're looking for a practitioner, to really work with somebody who, when you ask the question why, you actually get an answer. You get, because da 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 da, A, B, and C, and this might be what we can do about it. This we might have to look into for some more options, but you're not just getting a it just happens, or
Just live with
just,
it.
yeah, just live with it, just avoid that. Those aren't real, like,
That's
and
not an
again,
answer.
yeah, that's not an answer. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Yeah.
That's not an answer. And we all are worthy and deserving of answers and detailed and proper guidance to get the healing and the relief that we're looking for.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is something that you bring into your practice or not, because I do know you personally, as opposed to as a client or somebody that I've been working with a client, having them you take over some stuff for me with them if there's something that I'm stuck on, because I do that. That's something that I think is important for both of us. We both have faith in the Lord.
Mhm.
And when we look at how God designed our bodies so beautifully that they can heal themselves, and the reaction of an allergy is a defense mechanism. What is
Mhm.
the body defending itself of? A heart attack is a defense mechanism.
Mhm.
All of those kinds of things are defense mechanisms. And if we can identify what the body is concerned about defending itself from, or why there is such a strong response, then we can get to the way God designed that person to heal, and that healing process goes much faster. So I incorporate that into my practice. I pray with my clients, and if they don't want me to pray with them, I'll pray with them, pray about that before I talk to them, and that whole thing. You don't have to believe what I believe to be part of the healing journey with me, but I think giving honor and glory to the Lord for His beautiful design is something that I always want to point out, that your body can heal. We just got to figure out why it's not healing at this point. What's blocking it? What are those roots? What are those stems? And get the body moving in the right direction. So I appreciate us talking about your process and how you do things. This is a really good book. I enjoyed reading it, and I found it, I think, on Amazon is
Yep,
where I
it's
got
on
it.
Amazon. Hmm.
And then I took it to meet when I met with Alexa the next time. I'm like, would you sign my book? But I want to open up the floor to questions if we have someone on the call with us too. So if there's any questions you want to ask, great. If not, I am going to put in the chat how you can work with me, and Alexis, if you could do that too in the chat, how people can contact you with the whatever links. So This is how I work with clients. I always start off, my initial process is a Design to Thrive strategy call. And when I work with clients in that way, we go through this big long questionnaire and I identify what are the major things that we need to be addressing and kind of start moving in that direction. And I'm doing a special right now. Instead of $4.97, it's $97. And if you want to follow me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, it's Dr. Kari Barron, Karibarron. And Alexis is Food Allergy Doc, right, on Instagram?
It's the Food Allergy Doc on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Cool.
And my website is myfoodclues.com. And I'm putting the link in the chat to my comprehensive assessment that we talked about with a 50% off discount code. So I am putting that in right now.
And I will make sure that I put that on the YouTube thing if you're cool with that.
Oh, of course. And then use code.
Mary, did you have questions?
No, I was just trying to find the feed.
Oh, the chat part. So go on the bottom,
Yes.
it'll say chat.
It's not showing up on mine for some reason. Oh, there it goes. Okay, thank you. Yes.
There you go. I'm glad you asked. I want to make sure that you can get the information.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for joining us today. We had some link problems, so I appreciate you saying, hey, it's not working. Technology has not been my friend sometimes.
Let's see.
Why did that not happen? Were you able to see that? And I'll put this on the recap too, just so you know, in the YouTube part, I'll have all of this information.
Am I still on?
You are.
Could I ask a question now?
Of course, of course.
Okay.
Always.
I had about 24 food sensitivities. It was IgG and IgA. And I've gotten conflicting information from two different doctors. One that says don't eat any of the foods, and then another one that says, you need to build up your microbiome, and by eliminating all of that, you're actually making it worse. So, what is your opinion on that? On where you stand with the things that you do find you're having a reaction to?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. And especially when you have a doctor, like we were talking about, I don't know if you heard that part earlier, but we were talking about how doctors aren't paying attention to things. They're just saying cover it up or avoid it. And you can't live your life avoiding foods all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to that question for Mary today, Alexis?
I would say that is the premise of what Food Clues does. It brings resolution to conflicting views. Yes, there can be something to be said of temporarily reducing exposure to foods that trigger you to give your body a chance to heal, but that would also be like not driving your car because it's making a funny noise. It doesn't fix the noise, and it doesn't give you any information of what's going on with the car that could be causing the noise. You can just kind of have some confidence that you're probably not making it any worse because you're not using it, because you're avoiding the problematic situation. So that is, there can be some use in that. There can be some positivity in that. But as you can appreciate, if you're just leaving your car in the driveway, then you're not getting to work, or you've got to do something else that, can lead you down a road of some type of other issue. Just like avoiding a food trigger can still leave the issue unresolved. And when that issue is unresolved, it can start impacting your health in other ways.
And I'm going to jump in real quick. I am one of those people that I do say avoid it for right now, for a little bit. Like we're not going to do this ongoing avoidance. But for me, it's an energy factor. So if your body is struggling with an allergy and it is draining your body of energy, your body can't heal at that level as easily. So avoiding it as much as possible. There's some things that are really hard to avoid. Like avoiding milk actually is a lot harder than people realize. Milk and dairy can
Hmm.
be really hard to avoid. But for me, I'm like, I look at the energy factor. I'm like, let's avoid it for a little bit. But in that process, we're going to work on those roots and stems.
Hmm.
Hmm. And
And I don't
yeah,
think it messes with your microbiome at all if you do an avoiding thing and then start having it again or things like that. How do you address microbiome within like how you deal with the allergy symptoms?
that goes um in a general sense, the framework that I take people through with my healing program, it addresses three main areas. One is cleansing and flushing, so making sure that things can adequately get out of the body. So a lot of times there's a cleanup of the intestines that happens in that stage, even though it focuses on other areas. The second main stage is eliminating the enemy. So, especially if there are germs and toxins in the intestines that can definitely disrupt the microbiome, that's stage two. We get those things out. And because we've cleansed, we are very confident that they will actually exit and get out of the body instead of getting stuck in another organ or stuck in our fluids and causing inflammation and other issues.
Yeah.
And then the third stage, which a lot of times gets overlooked, is healing and restoration. So, again, with the example of the gut microbiome, we restore a healthy microbiome. We restore healthy nervous system interaction, fluid and blood flow through the intestines so that that microbiome can get fully restored and optimize in terms of how it's supposed to keep us happy and healthy. And it's those three things in that order that ultimately, as an example, really move people forward and getting them the relief that they need. And we do that for other areas as well, relative to what came up in your assessment
Yeah.
or, what other symptoms you have. But it's those three main stages: cleanse, eliminate, and then restore and optimize. That's the big thing at the end.
Yeah. And until you do the eliminating of those toxins, your body is not going to actually absorb nutrients the way that
Hmm.
it should be. You can't optimize the nutrition that you are trying so desperately to get to those cells.
And
So
yeah, yeah, and
it's,
I would add that without like the restoration and the healing, that absorption can't happen as well, because then it's kind of after those things are eliminated, we've still kind of got beat up damaged tissues, beat up damaged cells and organs. They need some TLC so they can start doing their job effectively.
I am in full agreement. What do you think about that, Mary? Does
Does
that
that
make sense?
Yeah, does that help to start answering your question a little bit?
Yes, it does. So are you sort of saying that in the elimination, continue with the cleanse?
For my program, not exactly. We usually do cleansing first, we do elimination second, and we do restoring and optimizing third. I guess my point would be the long-term relief of food reactions that people are looking for cannot happen without all three of those things being conquered, without all three of those stages being fully experienced. That's where people kind of get a little stuck, or don't get the full like relief that they're looking for. They've done a liver detox or they've done a juice cleanse, but nothing really much afterwards. So they can feel a little bit from being a little cleaner in their system, but there's still underlying factors driving things. So it's those three together that have to happen to
And it's
get
a
that full relief that
process.
we're looking for.
It's a
Hmm.
process. And Mary, it's not like a process goes one, two, three. Sometimes it's one, and then we add two, and then one kind of drops off more, and then three. But we're always making sure that we're detoxifying.
Hmm.
And there are lifestyle choices that you can make that will eliminate a lot of your toxin load. And that can make a huge, profound difference in any food sensitivity or any strain on your body. And when we can eliminate things, it's a process that it overlaps, I think, is probably the easier way to say it. It's not just, a set pattern. We do this and then we stop and we do this and then we stop and do that. Sometimes people have to go back to number one again because there's something that their body has encountered that's more of a detox that needs to take place. Does that sound kind of how you work with it, Alexis?
Yes, in a general sense, yes. Once we kind of complete a stage, we don't completely put it down. We keep like a maintenance. We keep maintenance things in place to keep that cleansing going, to keep making sure that elimination is happening effectively as we move through the program. So yes.
Yeah. And our cells, our body detoxes constantly. Every
Hmm.
moment of every day, we are detoxifying and regenerating. And it's not an ending process. And, just even looking outside, we have a lot of wind right now, so we don't have all the chemtrails. But I can't tell you how many times I have met with a client and they said, "Oh, my allergies are horrible right now." And I'm like, "Were you outside?" And they're like, "Yeah." And sure enough, the chemtrails were really bad that day. And they were out, at the park all day long with their family. And then we realized, okay, we got to do some more detoxification of that liver and those kidneys to make sure that is effective. And even the lungs, because if you're inhaling things, you're getting stuff on your skin. We are constantly being bombarded with more and more toxins and more chemicals that are dangerous for our health. And sometimes it is a response that will be an allergic reaction. Other times it's, constipation or diarrhea or something like that that could be considered an allergic reaction as well, or it could be considered, a strain on the body in a different way. So um, they overlap so much because our body is so interconnected. And we are at time right now. Mary, did you have any other questions?
No, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you being on the call too. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today. Thank you, Dr. Alexis, and taking the time to hang out with me. I love that we got to do this, and I got to learn a little bit more about your practice and how you love on the people that are in your pathway. And I pray that God will bless your business in amazing ways, that you rely on Him and see all of that fruitfulness of your efforts. Have an amazing day. If you want to, if you like this video, like and share all of that stuff that you're supposed to do on YouTube. And I would love to meet with you and learn a little bit more about what your needs are. And Alexis would too. So make sure that you look in the notes from the description for the YouTube channel so that you can see how to get a hold of Alexis if you are wanting to work with her. God bless you all. Have a great day.